I said, too much winning. Too much winning, sir. They know it. And it is a lot of winning. We had the best 6 months ever.
You could credibly argue that no modern president has had a more consequential first 6 months in office. I'm not putting a value judgment on the word consequential, but it's been very consequential. Donald Trump is right about that. He's been busy securing a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, pushing $4.5 trillion in tax cuts through. Illegal border crossings are at a record low. Inflation is lower than it was at the start of the year. Gas prices are actually affordable, and the stock markets continue to look up. It's all those things Americans wanted, right? What he campaigned on. So why are Donald Trump's poll numbers sinking? Overall, he has a 37% approval rating, but among independents, it's even lower, 29%. Those are his worst numbers so far in his second term. Now, Democrats should be doing cartwheels out there on the National Mall right about now, but no, because they're actually in even worse shape with a 28% approval rating. Joining us now to explain this all to us is political analyst, pollster, and message guru, Frank Luntz. Frank, can I start with Trump? Why is there this mismatch between he has done what he said he would do and where his poll numbers are?
Well, there's a phrase that American voters want more than anything else. Say what you mean what you say, do what you say, and then hold yourself accountable. And arguably, that's been exactly what's happened. The public knows what Donald Trump was going to do because he told them again and again, which is something that his opponent did not. And in fact, you point out those independent numbers. They were the ones who had given him the biggest boost, both on election day compared to 2020 and in the early days of his administration. So what's gone wrong? Messaging, language, communication. The public supports what he's doing in immigration for the most part, but they don't like what he's saying about it or how he's doing it. The public wants to end wasteful Washington spending. That's exactly what that legislation does. The public wants tax relief for hardworking taxpayers. They want to end benefits that are going to people who are in this country illegally. Everything that he's talked about is agreed upon by a majority of the American people. But the way he speaks about it, how he articulates it, and the administration is turning people off. They want cuts to come with a respect and an appreciation for people who work hard and play by the rules. They want to make sure that there's a safety net. They want Americans to be empathetic and understanding. Trump communicates strength. He communicates power. But he doesn't communicate that kind of softer, kinder, gentler America, and the public is saying no.
I thought of you today, Frank, because I knew you were coming on, and I was listening to Donald Trump talk before he had jetted off to Scotland. He was asked about potentially a rebate for the American public. Let's play it, and then I do want to come back and talk about it.
We're thinking about a rebate because we have so much money coming in from tariffs that a little rebate for people of a certain income level might be very nice.
So, Frank, I hear you on the sort of softer, more empathetic, more understanding side. What about just the cold, hard cash side? Yeah, I mean, like, is we're going to give you a check of some amount a winning message?
It would have been better if he set the context. If he talked about the hardworking taxpayers who play by the rules, work hard, sometimes 2 jobs or 3 jobs for 2 people, send their kids to education, do those things that they're supposed to do, and they're still struggling. One of the things that we found in 2020 is the importance of this segment that's called the paycheck to paycheck voter. People who literally have trouble making ends meet at the end of the week or end of the month. For Trump to acknowledge them, rather than just saying a rebate, is to say to them, we know how hard you work, we know how much you struggle, and we're going to address it. We're listening, we're paying attention, and now we're going to do something about it. That would have been more effective. Will the public support this rebate? Probably, about 50%. Would they support it more if he gave the context? Absolutely. And I want to emphasize one thing. Donald Trump's numbers are very high among his own voters. In fact, Trump is doing better among Republicans than any other Republican has done in the last 50 years. He's truly connecting to his base. However, those people who are unsure of him have turned against him. And those people who did not vote for him now really, truly despise him.
Yep.
And you're president of all of America, not just the people who voted for you.
And Frank, I want to quickly, because I don't want to leave this, because we focus on Trump's approval. I understand that he's president of the United States, but the Democratic brand is at or below the lowest it has ever been. Can you give me a concise why? Even if Trump, people may not like Trump, but they like Democrats even less. What explains that quickly?
First, the worst communicator in American politics is Chuck Schumer. And the fact that he's still the Democratic leader of the Senate, they have only themselves to blame. Second is that you got someone like Hakeem Jeffries or Cory Booker. These are people who know how to communicate the message, do it efficiently and effectively, and they do it out of the heart rather than out of politics. Third is that they should be listening to governors, such as Wes Moore of Maryland, governors who actually have to get the job done every single day. The Democrats could be better communicators, and they're choosing to depend on someone who it feels like he was born in a different century and a different era of American politics. They want to bring their numbers up. They need a new leader in the Senate.
So, Frank, again, is this about message or is this about messenger, or am I making a distinction where there isn't one?
You're making a very smart distinction, and it's about both. It is not about the policy. It is about the message and the messenger. If you want to change your polling numbers, if you want to change how the public perceives you, message and messenger matter, both for Republicans and for Democrats.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.